So a few weeks ago, Gear sent me this Moza Mini-S Smartphone Gimbal for me to review, and I was doing some research while waiting for the product to arrive, and I was surprised by a few things. This thing is $79 US, and considering most other smartphone gimbals cost anywhere between $100 to $150, I thought that was a pretty good deal. And in most cases, when something is too much cheaper than its competition, it's usually not a great sign. But I thought by now Moza is a pretty reputable brand, so I thought it would be worth giving it a shot. And even if it wasn't perfect or if it was missing some features, like for $79, how badly could you go wrong, right? And another feature that I was surprised by, it turns out that this gimbal has a party piece. So another problem with most gimbals is that, although they're not necessarily big and bulky, they're so awkwardly shaped, so it's so hard to carry them. They never fit into any of my bags, and there's no proper way to set them down anywhere. But this gimbal, it actually folds in half. So now it becomes much more manageable. A $79 gimbal that folds into half. This is a pretty good start so far, I think. And when I received the package in the mail, I was surprised by one more thing, and that was this mini tripod that was included. And you just screw it up on the bottom of the gimbal like so, and you can just let it stand on any flat surfaces. And I don't know if you know, but for most other name brand gimbals, this is like a $20 extra, and for them to include this in a $79 gimbal, I was sold. I mean, who wouldn't want this? So for me, they're hitting all the right marks, and at this point, the only thing that they needed to do was to not screw up their software. And most of you may know the smartphone gimbal softwares are pretty terrible. And some of them were okay, but my issue with some of them was that when you first get the gimbal, you have to register and then log in and then set up your Bluetooth or whatever. And then you finally set up the app and get it going. But then you find out that the app doesn't support some of the frame rates or resolution that the phone can shoot at. So for example, my iPhone XS Max could shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second, but then the gimbal app would only let you do it up to 30 frames per second. And also the slow-mo options would be gone. So things like that will always frustrate me, that the gimbal apps would always kind of bottleneck the capabilities of the smartphone cameras. And I'm happy to say that so far the Moza app hasn't done any of those. It lets me shoot at whatever frame rate that I want, whatever resolutions that I want that the iPhone is capable of. And I didn't even realize this because it happened so quick. And when I first set up the app, there was no registration, no logging in. The whole Bluetooth connection happened automatically inside the app, so I didn't even have to get to the settings. I mean, it's such a cliche, but it just worked. I mean, let me just show you how quick it is to get yourself going with this gimbal. So you open it up like this, and then you unlock your phone and open up the app, and then you just slide your phone into the slot. And also what's great about this is you don't even have to worry about balancing. All you have to do is just put the phone relatively in the middle of the slot and turn on the gimbal. And the Bluetooth is connected automatically, and you're good to go. And as a gimbal, it does the job perfectly. And if you're a vlogger who likes to talk into the camera while walking around, it does the great job stabilizing the camera. And also when you're running around, it does a pretty reasonable job as well. And the app itself has all the great features like most other gimbal apps do. Like it can do tracking, it can shoot at different frame rates and resolutions, and you can also set up time lapses, moving time lapses. And if you've never used a gimbal before, some of the things can be a bit overwhelming, but you'll pick this up pretty quickly. And for example, there are lots of shortcuts that you can use. So for example, let's say you have the camera pointing up like this, and then you hit this trigger twice, like so, and it comes back to the straight position again. And normally the camera will stay in that position no matter where you're pointing at. But if you hold the trigger, the camera would follow the direction that you're pointing at. Those two are probably the most useful features that you're going to use, and once you get used to that, you probably don't even need to use the joystick. All you have to do is just point at things and return it to the normal position, and you're good to go again. And there are some additional features like the sport mode or inception mode, which is when you tap on the bottom button 3 times, the gimbal turns this way, and what you can do is you can film things while the camera rotates like this. And combine that with some 240p slow-mo, you can do some pretty cool things. Here's the footage of me just walking with my gimbal at normal speed, and as you can see, the stabilization is pretty good, and when I turn, there's not a lot of jerkiness, and it does a pretty good job overall. And here's me running at full speed, and still looks pretty good. I mean, it's not like the camera stays perfectly still, but I don't think any gimbal does that. And the battery life is not bad either. Other reviewers reported about 6 or 7 hours of use. And 6 or 7 hours is a pretty long recording time. And unless you're gonna be live streaming for hours every single day, I don't think you have to worry about charging this thing up every single night. And I got this thing about 3 weeks ago, and I only charged it once to 100% when I first got it. And I took this thing everywhere. I took this to Universal Studios, and I've been testing it out a lot to review this product. And it doesn't show the exact percentages in the app, but just by the look of it, it looks like it has about 60 or 70% left. And I had this gimbal on the whole time I'm recording this, and even though my videos are usually somewhere between 5 to 15 minutes long, I usually spend about an hour or sometimes an hour and a half in front of the camera because I make a lot of mistakes and have to do a lot of retakes. But I feel like that barely decreased the battery level at all. The gimbal itself is charged by USB 3, and at the top there's a micro USB port for charging your phone. And you would think, being a $79 gimbal, the app would be pretty basic and you wouldn't have a lot of control, but you would be completely wrong. You can do live streaming, you can connect Bluetooth microphone with the app, and it even has manual control, so you can change your shutter speed, ISO, and your white balance. The possibilities are endless if you know what you're doing, but if you don't want to deal with that, then you don't have to. So far, pretty much everything sounds great, and you might be thinking, oh, it's a sponsored review, you're not allowed to say anything bad. But to be honest, they didn't pay me any money to do this review, and I didn't have to do it. But like for $79, I feel like it's a great deal. So is there any negatives on this gimbal? There's one thing. This is actually both a positive and negative, but this gimbal actually has a pretty unique design where the only connection point from the gimbal to the phone is this middle phone holder here, and the phone doesn't need to be plugged into the gimbal like some other gimbals to work. And that's a good thing because it frees up the lightning port or the USB port on your phone, so you can plug it into your gimbal to charge your phone, or you can plug in a microphone directly into the phone, which you cannot do with some other gimbals. So that's a good thing. But because of this design, I feel like this is not the most flexible gimbal that I've ever used. So the range of motion is a little limited compared to some other gimbals. So for example, if you want to shoot from a really low angle, maybe on a skateboard or something, you want to be able to hold down the gimbal like this, but then the range of motion here, it kind of stops here. So like your camera will be pointing downwards, not forward. Also in the inception mode, the camera does not quite rotate 360 degrees. It's not a full circle. But to be fair, these are pretty extreme cases, and I don't think a lot of people will be using these features all the time. To me personally, I think I would much rather have this foldable design than having a gimbal that spins 360 degrees. So the Moza Mini-S gimbal, I think it's a great value. I think it's a great starting point if you want a smartphone gimbal. Whether you're a YouTuber or a vlogger or a cinematographer, I think you can do a lot of cool things with this. So that's pretty much it for me today. Thank you for watching, and if you are interested in purchasing one of these, check out the link down below in my description, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.